Welcome to the
Club Football Podcast,
where the only question is,
does your team make it into the club?
Can he get in? No, he cannot!
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Club Dub Football Podcast. I'm Rob Rose, and as we hit the milestone that is 200 days until the beginning of the NFL regular season, myself and the group are going to be looking into our crystal balls and making our crazy, weird, and wild predictions for the 2021 NFL season. Thanks ever so much again for joining us, and on with the show.
Wearing no underwear today. I ain't gonna wear no underwear. That's
You ain't gonna wear no underwear? You ain't gonna wear no underwear?
Hi, gents.
Hi, Rob.
So, another nice long run of NFL chat, and we'll be looking into the future to just try and predict the crazy things that could happen in the 21 season. But before we do, the feature that nobody is calling for, that nobody necessarily wants, but it's there regardless. Before we get into the meat of the podcast, PB, I'm throwing over to you for your quiz question of the week.
Welcome to Phil's Quiz of the Week.
This might go a bit more smoothly this week. So, you're going to have 15 seconds to think of your answer, lads, and then I'm going to come to you. In 1991, the Los Angeles Rams picked which now Hollywood star with a 281st overall pick in the NFL draft? You have to wait till the end of the countdown music to chime in.
I just had a thought. Is it Terry Crews?
It is Terry Crews.
Yes.
Well
Do
done,
you know what?
James.
Do you know why I know that? It was only because I was watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine yesterday, and then I thought he's the only person, so it's got to be him. So that's good.
It's Terry Crews. There you go. Congratulations. You win this week. This week's prize is...
Star
You placed it, mate.
as well. I was going to go Ellen DeGeneres anyway, so it was never going to be my round, was it? So thank you for that, Phil.
Thanks for listening. That was Phil's Quiz of the Week.
Let's throw ourselves into our main topic of this show then. So we've looked ahead to 2021. We see some crazy things happening. And James Aldrin, you're going to start off by giving us your weird and wild predictions.
So I've got a few, but I'm going to start with one that I think could happen. After an absolutely dismal year, Bill Belichick finally retires.
I think they're going to have a few pieces back that they didn't have this year, such as Hightower, for example. I think they're going to be better at quarterback. I think Cam Newton, I think you can say, was pretty washed after his performance last year, but I guess we'll see if anyone picks him up this year. But I think they'll definitely be better at quarterback. I think they've got higher draft picks than they have probably ever had in the last 20 years. I just think they're going to be I think they could be a playoff team next year. I mean, it's a tough division with the Bills and the Dolphins, two strong teams there. Who knows? But yeah, no, I can't see him retiring. Not yet.
I just don't see how they get, to your point, how do they get better at quarterback? Like they've never successfully picked one.
I can't wait to hear your views on the other teams. They can't pick. They've never been any good at picking a quarterback apart from the greatest quarterback to ever play the game.
I think in Aldrin's defense, though, Brady was the 199th pick in the draft. And obviously everybody talks about that. They didn't pick Brady knowing that Brady was going to be the future of their franchise. They picked Brady to be the backup to Drew Bledsoe for however many years before they then moved on to the next person. But if ever there was picking someone in the draft and getting as lucky as possible, it's that. Castle is a good example because obviously when Brady went out injured that season, Castle still led the Patriots to what? 13 wins, 10 wins, somewhere between 10 and 13 wins. I can't look the stats up right now. Part of that, though, was because of the team that Belichick had built around the quarterback position. There was a discussion going on Twitter yesterday around how many colleges had better skill position setups than the Patriots did last year. And spoiler alert for anyone who didn't see it, it was a lot. The Patriots need a serious rebuild and they need to bring in serious talent. and the quarterback position might be the thing that suffers because of it.
I think the thing that, like, they've had a luxury over the last 20 years of having Tom Brady, not just as an absolute stud of a quarterback, but over that time, he's taken so many nice team-friendly deals and got them out of jams to bring in talent or keep a large group of quality players. I don't think you get that with any kind of future quarterback. I just don't see it. Like, the market's changed. And
you said that you don't see them getting better at the court. I don't think they could get worse. Like last year, they had Cam Newton who could barely throw, and Jarrett Stidham. Like, how, you know, if they draft a quarterback in the first round, they're going to get a better quarterback.
Yeah, but my point is, they haven't got a good enough pick to get a top quarterback in this draft. I don't think. Like, they're not going to get a Justin Fields or a Zach Wilson, and they're certainly not getting Trevor Lawrence. So who's beyond that in terms of actual talent?
The reason I had a similar, and actually will still go along with my similar 2021 prediction in a minute relating to the Patriots, is for all of these things about, you know, they've only got to get better at quarterback. Even if I agree that, you know, getting better at quarterback should be straightforward enough, and getting better at quarterback is really certainly the biggest piece they need. The division has got an awful lot better around them while they were having an off year. You know, I mean, I think you could be looking at 3 teams who suddenly will probably all feel like they can give the Patriots a run for their money. And to your point, Aldrin, when was the last time the Patriots had to go out aggressively and get a quarterback? Now, one of the things you were talking about there was they've tried many times to draft Brady's heir apparent. But you were never going to use a first-round pick on those kind of guys, were you? You were going to take a second, third, fourth-round pick, see if anyone kind of, you know, sticks, see if you strike gold with anybody, because you know you've got Brady under center. I think there's a certain, whether you'd call it arrogance or a certain nature about the Patriots, that they have a certain system that works in a certain way. And you've even heard the argument applied the other way when you heard, 12 months ago, people saying that Brady would never make it in Tampa Bay because he was a system quarterback. The biggest problem I think the Patriots have got is that system needs to be broken down. You know, that attitude and that mantra needs to be broken, because I think they need to go out aggressively and get a quarterback, or they are really going to struggle. So I'm going to piggyback on your point, Aldrin, and go slightly out of order, right? Because my bold 2021 prediction is that Bill Belichick does not make the end of the season as the New England Patriots head coach.
You can't win what he's won and do what he's done with that organization and not get to the end of a season. I just can't see that happening. So I don't think Robert Kraft would do that.
Oh, I'm not saying it would be Kraft's decision. I think we're talking about building from the bottom up, breaking down the walls of this great dynasty and starting again. I think Josh McDaniel turned down Indianapolis for a reason. I think if there is a plan, it's probably a plan beyond Belichick. So yeah, I'm with you, James. I think New England could be ready. Do you know what? I think it's going to take a little bit of work to make them relevant in 2021.
They're going to have to be real aggressive this year to replace those players, particularly at quarterback, because to my mind, good quarterbacks are going off the board now. You know, the players that could be available, like, you know, Wentz, Stafford, all those players are on the way out. I think the comment that Stafford made, or that was rumoured to be made around send me anywhere but New England, I think maybe says quite a lot about how much maybe quarterbacks view the organisation in terms of that rebuild.
I think the big point you made there is, you know, now they're looking for a quarterback. I think that changes things in free agency. Because, you know, a lot of players were going there in years gone by to play with Tom Brady. You know, you knew you had that chance at putting a ring on. And, you know, you hear the names like Derek Carr. I'm not sure Derek Carr turns the Patriots into a championship team, but I will admit he's a hell of a step up on Cam Newton.
Tom Landry was the coach at the Cowboys for 25, 26 years. He led them to multiple Super Bowls. He led them to be one of the most successful franchises of all time. And then the day after Jerry Jones bought the Cowboys, he fired Tom Landry and brought somebody else in because Landry wasn't getting it done anymore. You are only ever as good as your last season. And if, like, last season, the Patriots weren't very good. I am not entirely convinced that Josh McDaniels is the choice to return the Patriots to glory. I think he didn't really show an incredible amount in Denver, aside from introducing the NFL to the majesty and gloriousness that is Tim Tebow.
The toughest thing is their division. I think the Bills are going to win the division. The Dolphins are... I picked them as a playoff team next year, but it all depends on their quarterback play. I don't think Tua's done anything to really suggest that he's going to be a great quarterback, albeit it was a bit of a, stop-start season for him. So I guess we'll see. I think a lot of that hinges on them. But, the Patriots, they've got a lot of cap space, and it only can take one, 2 free agents to turn into a little different prospect. If they pick up someone like Allen Robinson or, hopefully not Chris Godwin or, another receiver that's out there to give them some weapons. And then they get, let's say they get a JJ Watt as well. And then they draft one of the kind of top 5 quarterbacks in the draft. It makes it an entirely different proposition to how they looked at this time last year with Cam or Jarrett Stidham under center.
So now, Phil, we're going on to your predictions for 2021. What you got for us?
I am going to pick that the New Orleans Saints are not going to be a playoff team in this season. Bold prediction, I know, but they've got a lot of cap trouble. And I know that they can restructure loads of contracts and there's trades that can be made and all this kind of stuff. But I don't think, if you look at how they played down the stretch last year, I don't think they were that great a team. I think you take Drew Brees out and then are they going to go with Taysom Hill? Or would they go with Jameis Winston? They've got to get him under contract if they do want to do that. I think it could quite quickly fall apart. I think if you look at some of the attitudes on some of their bigger players, I think if it starts to go downhill a little, I don't know whether they've got that, that resilience and that togetherness to kind of get over that and drive them forward. So for me, my bold prediction is the Saints aren't going to make the playoffs.
The one thing that I would go and challenge on that is that I know they've got a lot of cap trouble and they're going to have to work that out. But, that's not out of the ordinary. Teams do that every year and they cut players and they pick up other players and they make something of it. Do you know what the biggest thing for me, and I really hate to say it because I love him, but I feel like Breeze has been the guy holding them back the last few years and not driving them forward. And I think if, as we all expect, Drew Brees retires, then that makes things potentially really exciting at the quarterback position. I know that Taysom Hill didn't look like a world beater, but he went, 3 out of 4 or 4 out of 5? He won a lot of games. And I think Peyton makes exciting, interesting, innovative calls. And with a maybe slightly more mobile quarterback or who, if they stick with Taysom Hill or if they bring somebody else in, then I don't know. I feel like it almost makes them more exciting with Breeze. So I don't disagree. They've got a lot of trouble in terms of the cap and all that stuff, but I think they've got enough stars. And if you replace Breeze with somebody younger and more mobile and open up Peyton's playbook, then that makes it potentially a way back to the playoffs and further, maybe.
Let me counter that though. Teddy Bridgewater the year before, he looked really good. It won him a $30 million contract or whatever from the Carolina Panthers, and they're already thinking of cutting him. So
but to my point, do you not think that shows how good Peyton is at getting the best out of quarterbacks and making exciting play calls? You're exactly right. It got him a big payday, but the reason it got him a big payday is because he went unbeaten in that Saints offense. If he can make Bridgewater look like a superstar and get a mega contract, then surely he can do that with anybody.
So my quick point would be there are a few rumours swirling around that Breeze might want to give it one more go. And might even come back. I think if he does come back, to both of your points, I don't think they're a playoff team. I think he wasn't the quarterback that we'd seen in previous years at the start of last season. He definitely wasn't that quarterback by the end of last season. The only thing to counter your point, Aldrin, so I'm definitely on board with the Peyton point. I think he's as good a head coach as there is in the NFL. I think he game plans as well as anybody. And I think they will always be competitive for as long as he's their head coach. The only thing with the cap space issue is that it means they're not at the top table when it comes to the available quarterbacks. The problem with Winston is you're trying to make up points when your defense haven't even set foot on the field. I mean, that guy just turns over the ball like nothing I've ever seen.
If Breeze does retire, and personally, I think I kind of hope he does, because I don't think coming back next season is going to do anything positive to his legacy. I think it would just go down as another guy who hung around for a bit too long and didn't retire when he should have. He says about superstar NFL quarterback Drew Brees. And I think the Saints are probably going to roll with some combination of Taysom Hill and potentially Jameis Winston. I think Sean Payton has never had a franchise quarterback that isn't Drew Brees as a head coach. It's always been Brees and Payton in New Orleans. And I think he'll want to do something a little bit different. He'll want to prove he can do these quality things with anybody. And looking at Winston as that kind of rebuilding project, I think fits into that mentality that everybody says Payton has.
I'm closer to you, Phil. I think either way, there's a recipe for disaster there. And I just think when we're talking Winston and Hill, bit more film on. I don't know. I mean, I put nothing past Payton at all. But when we're talking about crazy out there predictions for 2021, I think that's probably a coin flip for me as to whether the Saints are relevant or not. So, JB, round out our first race around the round table with your prediction for 2021.
So Rob's just used the phrase bold predictions, and I'm going to be completely honest with you. There's, from my point of view, been nothing bold about any of these. It's all very, all Belichick's old, all the Patriots might be bad. This is how you do bold predictions. Super Bowl 56 is being held provisionally on February the 6th, 2022 at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California. That Super Bowl will be contested between the Los Angeles Chargers and the Los Angeles Rams. Come at me, bros.
So let me just piggyback on the back of this, right? Because I've had both of my bold predictions stolen this episode. So I'm going to say to you, I genuinely think the Los Angeles Chargers will be in the Super Bowl in a year's time. I think they have got an absolute Super Bowl roster. I think Hunter Henry is a question mark. I think running back is probably a question mark, but I mean, running backs aren't like quarterbacks, are they? There's the ability there. So I'm half with you, right? I think the Chargers will win the Super Bowl. So let me put that bold prediction out there. Talk to me about the Rams with Matthew Stafford sweeping the NFC.
I mean, I'm coming at this from a place of Super Bowl in California, two teams from California. It's their home stadium. That all makes like quite a nice prediction. We keep talking about how good Sean McVay is. We keep talking about how many good pieces the Rams have, because let's not forget they have reigning 3-time Defensive Player of the Year Aaron Donald. They've got Jalen Ramsey. They've got Sean McVay's mind on offense, dialing up things for Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, the Everett and Higbee, the tight ends. I think they showed a lot in their run game last year. I think they probably just need to pick a back. But I think the only thing holding the Rams back from greater success last season was the fact they didn't have a quarterback that was willing to push the pace and was potentially the kind of person that could thrive in that Sean McVay offense. And what they've gone and done is they've gone and got a quarterback who can absolutely push the pace and absolutely chuck it down the field when he needs to. He can throw the ball if you need him to throw the ball.
So if that's the Rams side, let me chip in with the Chargers then. The Chargers, we just talked about Drew Brees potentially holding back the Saints, a harsh thing to say, against a future Hall of Famer, but, in some quarters may be fair. I just think that coaching staff for the Chargers absolutely held them back in what could have been an absolutely brilliant year. I mean, for the first few weeks with Herbert under center, they were, not all that keen to throw the ball, running so much when this guy is just electric. He just has the most accurate arm. He has wonderful instincts. He's got some really great pieces around him. I think a really good wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2. All right then. So JB, if this is kind of, sharing our prediction, I reckon the Chargers are going to be Super Bowl champions in 12 months. Chargers against the Rams. Who are you picking?
I suppose for purposes of an argument, I will say I think it will be the Rams.
I love the Chargers, and I loved watching Justin Herbert last year. I called it early that I thought he was the quarterback of the draft, and I think he proved that. But to your point, in terms of the coaching staff holding them back, Rob, the only thing that gives me pause to think that the Chargers can go deep in the playoffs and potentially get to the Super Bowl and even win it is they've got a former defensive coordinator of 1 year as their head coach now, a rookie head coach with very minimal experience at NFL level and any level of any note. So that's the only thing that, I don't know, just to my mind doesn't sit right. And don't get me wrong, I think maybe in a year or two's time, he gets more experience and he builds up some knowledge of the game and certainly learns how to get the best out of Justin Herbert from an offensive standpoint. But I don't know. Do you really think he's got enough, or he showed enough at that Rams team to make a Super Bowl winning franchise?
No, is the answer to that. I think you're both off your rocker, and I don't think either of those teams are going to make it to the Super Bowl next year. I would almost go the other way with a bold prediction there and say that Sean McVay won't be the coach of the LA Rams starting the 2022 season. I think his first season, he came on strong. They made the Super Bowl off the back of Wade Phillips' defense. I think they had a ropey second year, didn't make the playoffs. Wade Phillips they got rid of. They brought in this new guy as defensive coordinator who's done really well. They made the playoffs off the back of a great defense. He's gone off to be a coach somewhere else. They're going to have to bring in a new guy. I just think they're in a strong division. I don't see them. I think they could miss the playoffs. I certainly don't see them going deep into the playoffs. And I think come next off season, Sean McVay could be out of a job.
I just think, so it is bold. I mean, I think McVay being out of a job, he'd be out of a job for minutes, I think is the reality. No longer being the head coach of the Rams, if that's your prediction, is a lot less likely than our Belichick leaving the Patriots prediction from earlier. But I'll say this. I mean, everyone's saying, Brandon Staley, he's a head coach. He only had a year's experience as a coordinator. What does that tell you? The guy was hired as a head coach after 1 year as a coordinator because he was absolutely on fire. This guy produced the NFL's best defense in a single year.
Such a struggle with Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, just like the struggle the Bucks had with Brady and Gronkowski. Move over, right? So Brandon Staley has done an absolutely amazing job. Goes in to a defense with absolutely untapped potential. You look at the free agent merry-go-round and everyone's talking about, go get a pass rusher, right? The Chargers have got two. They've got great players at corner. They've got great players at safety. Like I said, the thing for me is I'd love them to be bringing back Hunter Henry or going out and ironically getting one of the big free agent tight ends, which might include Gerald Everett if he leaves the Rams. But I just think the Chargers have got all the pieces they need. I think he's a great hire, lots of energy, lots of verve for them. Yeah, in 12 months, we'll be playing back this clip and I'll either look very wise or very foolish, I suppose.
One of the things we talked about quite a few times in our playoff series was the success of Mike Vrabel in Tennessee. And we talked about how we liked Mike Vrabel and how he took a moribund franchise.
Moribund. Adjective. Meaning at the point of death.
And gave it some character and gave it some oomph, really injected some passion into that team. Mike Vrabel was a defensive coordinator for one season with the Houston Texans before he moved to be the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. Why can't Brandon Staley be exactly the same? John Harbaugh with the Ravens has never been an offensive or defensive coordinator. He was a special teams coordinator when the Ravens brought him on board to be their head coach.
I think a lot of it might depend on the off season and what sort of off season program there's going to be. Because if you look at the teams that made the playoffs last year, and I think one rookie head coach made the playoffs in the AFC, which was Stefanski at the Browns. And looking at the NFC playoff teams, I don't think there was one. If they're still unable to do stuff because of COVID, and God knows what the situation is going to be, by that point there, I don't know if he'll come in, and be able to kind of really implement his plan straight off the bat. So it's going to be interesting.
I just think the other thing that makes me so big on the Chargers is I think there is a bit of an AFC vacuum where we're seeing some of those perennial superpowers starting to maybe leave the scene a bit. I mean, we've already talked about New England. Pittsburgh seem to be probably in the news for all the wrong reasons as much as anybody. I mean, who knows where those major pieces will land in the next few weeks. But I just think, the Chiefs are coming off the back of what must be an absolute gut punch of a Super Bowl defeat as well. I just think the Bills, the Dolphins, we've already mentioned, the Chargers, I think there's the space for these guys to get into the playoffs and be relevant. And I just love the Chargers. So yeah, there's my pick. So JB, you're going Rams in 12 months time. I'm going Chargers. Aldrin, on our second roll around the table with me already having used up my two gambling chips, give us your second crazy 2021 prediction.
So again, I don't know if this feels crazy or if it feels morbidly possible, but my prediction is that Deshaun Watson makes the Super Bowl as the quarterback of the Miami Dolphins.
They're in for him, aren't they? So it's possible. They've got a good roster.
I feel like we were talking just before, weren't we, and saying that Deshaun Watson had a discussion with the new head coach of the Texans and said he has no interest in taking another snap as the quarterback of the Texans organization. So I just feel like it feels like such a natural landing spot for him. Great franchise, good coach that is on the way up that he would like to play under, clearly. They've got the draft picks to make that sort of trade. It's a place that you want to go and play, and they seem like a franchise on the up. So, yeah, I just think that would be such an explosive trade. But if he goes there, I think they make the Super Bowl.
I love the prediction. I think the only thing I challenge with your prediction, and it is a minor one, is I think the sentence could be Deshaun Watson makes the Super Bowl with enter your team there. I think we talked about this last week, didn't we? I think the 49ers, I think the Broncos, I think absolutely the Dolphins. I mean, there's a few I'd probably say are a bit of a stretch. I mean, if he ends up at somewhere like the Chicago Bears, I mean, is there really enough around him there? But yeah, this is a guy who I think could probably make the Super Bowl with a handful of teams, which is why I love that as a bold prediction. Are you going any further, James? I mean, is this guy going to be Super Bowl MVP?
If they get to the Super Bowl with Deshaun Watson at quarterback, then 100% he's MVP, because I think he's MVP of pretty much every game that he plays in. Like, you look at this season and the guy is, I don't know, he's playing 52 positions on his own. He's filling the entire roster and dragging that team along with him. And the fact that they weren't winning games was literally nothing to do with that poor guy. He was in there doing everything possible. And I think if he goes into a franchise that isn't as much of an absolute shambles as the Texans organization is and has been over the last 12 months, with a few complementary pieces and a hell of a lot less off-field noise, Miami is a place that Deshaun Watson would want to go. He's going to go under a head coach that would be, well, I think we've all said we all agree that he's probably one of the best head coaches around, and he's done wonders with an organization that was an absolute shambles under Adam Gase.
I love that as well. Another one you could just put a blank in. Blank were a shambles under Adam Gase. So, Aldrin, I think you've nailed both of yours. I've obviously had both of mine, although piggybacking off other people's predictions. So, Phil, does this mean I'm over to you for your second?
Yeah, no, I can't choose between two quarterbacks, Mitch Trubisky or Sam Darnold, but I'm going to pin it to Sam Darnold and say Sam Darnold is going to be a playoff starting quarterback this season. I'm not saying it's going to be with the Jets.
Who for? Nah, you got to go further with your prediction.
It's tough because there's a lot of teams in for him, aren't there? But I don't know who. I am going to say that Sam Darnold will be starting quarterback in the playoffs for the San Francisco 49ers next season.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, nice. See, when you started making your prediction, I thought you were going to tell me that they weren't going to be in the league. And do you know what? Sam Darnold is at a bit of a juncture because we're talking about a guy who could land on a playoff-ready contender or find himself struggling as a backup without a lot really to sing about in 12 months' time.
Well, my Mitchell Trubisky one was going to be that he's the next Ryan Tannehill, and he takes a backup job somewhere and ends up winning the job by the end of the season. I think
you're probably going to say that he's going to win the Super Bowl with the New England Patriots next, aren't you?
I don't think so, but I don't know. Trubisky looked good for a little while. I mean, they absolutely made a mistake drafting him over Watson or Mahomes. That's obvious, but he's looked good at times. The stat, that we mentioned before the podcast, that he's never in 50 plus games, whatever, he's never thrown a pick six. I mean, part of that's probably down to the people around him and stuff like that. But I don't know. I don't think he's that bad a quarterback. And I think if he's protected enough, I think if he goes into the right scheme with good coaching, I think he could be the Tannehill. He could go somewhere where he's not looked great. He goes as a backup and then by the end of the season wins a starting job.
The other argument you could make is that when he's been in Chicago, has he really had a run game? Has he really had top tier receivers? I think Allen Robinson has been the only half decent receiver they've had. And we talked him to death last week because I agree. I think he's a top 5 receiver, but beyond that, who are we looking at? I don't think he's had he's throwing to Jimmy Graham at tight end in the latter part of his career. So I do kind of understand the narrative. I think, and arguably, I think Sam Darnold, you make the same conversation, right? I don't think he's had adequate protection. I don't think he's had a run game. I don't think he's had receivers. So could you really say that either of them is the problem?
My quick one, I will be quick in the move over, is the difference for me between Darnold and Trubisky is I do think Trubisky's been in a quarterback-friendly setup already.
Yeah.
I really do. I think if he can't be successful there, I don't see him finding a better way. Having said that, I think the Darnold pick could be absolutely on the money. I somehow, and for no real concrete reason, have an awful lot more faith in Darnold than I seem to Trubisky. But
no, that's fair. I think you're absolutely right with Darnold. He's had no one to throw to. He's had bad coaching. I think he's a decent quarterback, and I think I would even say it's more likely that Sam Darnold plays in the Super Bowl next year than we have a Chargers v Rams Super Bowl. But there we go.
Let's see. That's where you're wrong. Just as we've been talking about Darnold, kind of in my head, I've been replaying, I think, the Thursday night football game when they weren't sure if Darnold was going to play because he was injured again with something. And it was when he made that 20-odd yard rushing touchdown where he sort of broke a couple of tackles because you could see on his face, this was a guy who was like, I'm getting in the end zone. We are getting a touchdown. I am not leading this team to another field goal. And that, to me, kind of epitomizes what you're getting with Sam Darnold. You're getting a guy who wants to win. Judging Darnold on his performance with the Jets is a bit of a mistake because you can't judge anyone based on their performance with the Jets, with the exception of Adam Gase.
The only other thing that I wanted to mention on Sam Darnold is he feels like he's been knocking around the league for a while, and it's always like, oh, he's had loads of head coaches, and he's not. The guy's still only 23. He came into the league as a really young quarterback. So I think in a more stable organization with a little bit extra in terms of talent around him, I think he could become a much better quarterback than we've seen from him. So yeah, I don't think that's a bad prediction, Phil.
But where are we now? I'm losing track of where we are. So JB, are we going to round out our podcast with your second wild prediction for 2021?
Weirdly enough, I appear to be the person on the podcast this week that is centering all of their points around one team. And I'm not entirely sure how I got here, but in 1986, the National Football League Most Valuable Player Award was given to Lawrence Taylor of the New York Giants. He is currently the only defensive player that has ever been named MVP. The 2021 NFL MVP will be a defensive player, and that player will be number 99 for the Los Angeles Rams, Aaron Donald.
Didn't really do a lot against the Bucs 09, but there we go. I've not even mentioned him that much today. You guys have, but I can't see it. Aaron Donald, multiple defensive player of the year, all that, not a league MVP for me.
I don't know. I think he's absolutely... you don't win 3-time MVP defensive player of the year for no reason. And I do think He's phenomenal. He's in a really good situation on that defense. Like Rob touched on before, they have got absolute talent at every position on that defense. And the fact that you've got Jalen Ramsey in there and the corners that they've got make it better for pass rushing players, simply because the quarterback has to take another look, see where Jalen Ramsey is, look at maybe moving on to his second or third receiving option. So I don't think it's a mad prediction, because every time I see Aaron Donald, I'm impressed. He's double, triple teamed and he still gets to the quarterback. But I do think that's a heck of a stretch to become MVP, just purely because the way the game is right now in terms of quarterbacks and the excitement that they bring, and certainly the way people view the quarterback position over pass rushing, I think it's a big stretch.
I mean, I would go on record happily and say I think Aaron Donald's probably the best player in the NFL. I think he's exciting. I think he's a generational talent. So do I think it'll happen? No, but I'll go as far as to say I think he's probably the best player in the NFL at the moment.
I think consistency is the key with him as well. 3-time Defensive Player of the Year is not an easy feat to come by, and he makes it look easy. Like, let's be honest, he makes it look easy. He bullies linemen. Like you say, he's almost revolutionized that position, because you could argue when he came into the league, people would go, well, he's not got ideal height because he's not 6'6". He's not a giant tall guy. But I think, we've talked about, in past weeks when we talked about players like Megatron and all those kind of players that redefined what the position was. I think Megatron did that in terms of, being a big-bodied, tall, but quick receiver that could do it all. I think Donald is exactly that on the defensive side of the ball. I think
MVP, I'd love to see it. Because I think that really does demonstrate that you are that type of talent. If you're looking at a league MVP that isn't offensive or a quarterback in essence, I think it would absolutely be something he's worthy of. The guy breaks the mold.
You're listening to the Aaron Donald Fan Club podcast.
I think the only thing that I would add to that, because I'm kind of with you, I just don't think it's possible for him to get MVP. But I think part of the reason is that the whole offensive game plan, whenever you play the Rams, is stopping Aaron Donald and others get opportunities. He still puts up great numbers, don't get me wrong, but I think it's beyond him to put up the kind of transcendational numbers.
Transcendational. Adjective. Meaning, wait, scrub that, not an actual word.
I just don't think it's possible for him to put up the kind of numbers that would garner MVP level attention.
So the thing that I have in my mind when I make this is we were close to having another defensive MVP before. The 2014 MVP that sits on Aaron Rodgers' shelf, to my money and to several people, belongs to JJ Watt. It should have been a JJ Watt MVP, because that season he did transcend the role that he had in the team. He transcended the history of playing on the defensive line and really showed what was possible. And to win the MVP, you have to have this certain je ne sais quoi. You have to be able to show what you can do. And Rob's correct. There isn't a better player in the league now than Aaron Donald.
Some wonderful predictions. It all leads and points towards a very exciting 2021. Thank you for your company, gents. We'll be back in 7 days for more of the same.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.
This is amazing.
Remember to subscribe and be cool. Tell your friends.
The game is over. The game is over.
I love that you've stolen Rob's prediction. I was going to say, do not think you're getting away with moribund and je ne sais quoi when I got grief for that. You can absolutely dream on, James Bushby.